This is the Rational Reminder Podcast, a weekly reality check on sensible investing and financial decision-making from two Canadians. We're hosted by me, Benjamin Felix, Chief Investment Officer at PWL Capital, and Cameron Passmore, Portfolio Manager at PWL Capital.
Welcome to episode 341. And yes, I'm back for this episode. Great to be back, but boy, am I rusty, Ben. But back to share some news.
You don't sound rusty. You sound smooth as ever.
Smooth as ever.
So this is going to be quite a different episode. Well, a very different episode for anything that we've ever done. So hopefully listeners do find it interesting and get some value out of it. But it's a very different kind of episode that we've never been able to do before, and you'll understand why in a minute. So we do have some exciting news to share, and when you hear this news, it's also going to explain where Cameron's been lately. Cameron, do you want to go ahead?
Sure. And yeah, the news is after nearly 30 years of being employee-owned, PWL Capital has joined a firm called OneDigital. And just to put a fine point on that, yes, OneDigital has acquired PWL Capital. And I think you, Ben, could not be more excited. And that's what the point of today's conversation is about. I'm guessing most people haven't heard of OneDigital. I had not heard of OneDigital either when Mike Sullivan, who's our guest today, when Mike reached out to me during the summer of 2023. So closing in on 19 months ago, we had our first just initial conversation. And since then, we've done lots of conversations, travel, soul searching, dreaming. And we made the decision to join OneDigital.
Yep. How would you explain why we decided to do this?
So we found ourselves in an interesting spot in the Canadian marketplace. And the Canadian marketplace on its own is quite interesting. We're well known to have some of the highest fees in the world, like MERs. We're also known to have some of the lowest adoption rate of systematic investing, indexing, whatever you want to call it, markets work type philosophy. And that's been the sandbox we've been playing in. And I think we've had some success with this podcast, with the work that we've done with clients, with your YouTube channel, in getting the message out about what we believe in and what many people believe in Canada. And in Canada, there is no scaled national firm of size that does this. There are a lot of great advisors that believe in this. There's a lot of great advisors doing great work. But there is no large enterprise that has this as their core belief. So you and I have talked about this so many times, Ben, where we just dreamed about what could we be. And what else is interesting, too, is the Canadian marketplace is interesting, but PWL as a firm is interesting. And we've grown so much over the past 5, 6, 7 years. You know, our team is now approaching 100 people. The assets we manage are approaching $4 billion. So all of a sudden, you dream about what is possible. Our advisor group is extremely young and extremely talented. The average advisor here is 20 years younger than I am. The average client is quite a bit younger than average. We have a relatively low base of retirees. That makes our client set, our business, quite unique in the marketplace. And you say, what could we do with this team in this country with this kind of exposure and awareness that we've had, great part due to the phenomenal work that you've done on the podcast and your YouTube channel. And then we started getting from the marketplace some firms reaching out to us to acquire us. And those conversations always felt like they were spreadsheet MBA driven. And I had many of those conversations, as have others in the firm, about us being taken over. It just never felt right. It felt more like a transaction as opposed to the fulfillment of a dream. But this conversation I had with Mike, June of 23, it was different. It was about like, what do you guys want to do, and who are you, and who are you, and where are you going, and what's your purpose, and what's your mission, and tell me about your people. And it was interesting. We didn't need them to be successful. They didn't need us to be successful. And we agreed to say, that's interesting, but we'll stay in touch, and kind of carried on. There's no aggressive follow-up or nothing like that. And then we just kept on slowly talking over the subsequent 18 months. And of course, you were a big part of that. And here we are.
Well, I mean, so you mentioned it, but there was a period of time where I don't have an explanation for how the timing worked the way that it did, but we were approached completely unsolicited by multiple firms, and we can't talk about who they were, but all very, very exciting firms to hear from. That were like, "Hey, we're interested in you guys." And it's all like, "Wow, that's just incredible." And it was all clustered around the same period of time. We kept looking at each other like, "Another one? Like, what is happening?" And they were all, each story was unique about why they had decided to reach out. So it wasn't like there was some I don't know, database that included us all of a sudden. It was like all these unique stories about how they heard about us and why they decided to reach out. And we did have a lot of conversations, and initially came away saying, "You know what, we're good. We're going to keep going." But it was, I mean, it was Mike, who listeners are going to hear from in a couple minutes. Talking to him, continuing to talk to him, just became increasingly obvious to us and other people in our firm that this was something potentially pretty special and very different from all of the other conversations that we had had.
Yeah, to be clear, all the firms we spoke to were wonderful. There's just a cultural difference. The more we talk to more people, and always carrying a large dose of skepticism, just to be careful, not get blinded. And when you get great culture together with the experience set that they have for where we are and what we think we can do in Canada, it to us became pretty obvious that this is a great opportunity that needs to be explored further. So we spent a ton of time doing that exploration to understand more about them, more about how we would operate in this world. And, tick box after tick box just went by. It's like, man, it's incredible, and it continued to be incredible through the entire process.
Every opportunity that they had, that Mike and the rest of his team at OneDigital had to either impress us or not. Every time there was a crossroads or whatever, where it was like, this is a pivotal conversation. Every time we came away being like, wow, just incredibly impressed, incredibly aligned. And we went into this, as we started to get more serious about it, looking at how doing something like this would affect our clients, first and foremost, how it would affect our people, our team, our employees, and really how it would enable the vision that we have for Canada. And like you said, Cameron, OneDigital checked all those boxes and then some.
And even though it's a 5,000 person firm, sorry to interrupt, but it's a 5,000 person firm, it still feels entrepreneurial. It's still led by the co-founders. We communicate with the co-founders often, and this is a 5,000 person firm, but often during every day about solving stuff. So we were not handed a recipe book as to this is how thou shalt operate. It's like, how do you guys think we should do this? What are the opportunities? How would we solve stuff? And it's been, frankly, a wonderful experience.
Yeah. I do want to say that once we decided on this path, so we'd initially said, we're going to keep going this on our own. But then once we decided to take OneDigital seriously and that as an option seriously, we did engage in a formal process to assess the firms that had initially reached out to us. Through that formal process, we also initiated conversations with a few other firms that could have been a fit. We took the whole thing very, very seriously. There was a lot of due diligence both ways. A lot of firms that were ultimately interested in us, but we didn't mess around. We took this seriously. We had external advice from people with expertise in assessing deals like this. So it wasn't like we just liked these guys. It was like we did like them, and that caused us to look at this option seriously. Once we got to that point, though, we initiated this formal process, and OneDigital came out on every possible metric ahead of the pack, and that's how we're here.
Categorically never do anything that would adversely affect our service. This is a story about amplifying what you and I worked on here for the past 7-8 years. It's about amplifying the message, amplifying the team, helping more people, attracting more team members, attracting other potential advisory firms to join. That's what this is about. It's about helping more people in the way that we have done. This is not about synergies or cost cutting. That is not at all on the table.
Well, that's what OneDigital saw in us. They see one team with one consistent message, delivering comprehensive advice and planning as a team. And that's something that's pretty unique, especially in Canada, especially with the sort of systematic, low cost, whatever you want to call it, investment philosophy that we have. That doesn't exist outside of us. There are individual teams that invest that way, whatever. But as one firm with one message, rallied around the same thing, that's what we represent, and that's why we are interesting to them. And none of that's going to change. If anything, it'll be amplified, it'll be augmented in different ways. And I think it'll also put us in a position to, we talk about this with Mike, to become the mothership for advisors in Canada who are aligned with us, who think this way about planning and about portfolio management. We're now in a position that we were not in before to be the landing place for people like that at any level of
That's right.
existing assets that they may be managing, which previously would have been a challenge for us to do. Yeah. So I mean, on that note, any Canadian advisors who are aligned with us, who do think that way, who are listening to this podcast, now is a great time to get in touch, because we're much more well equipped to facilitate and execute on those types of conversations than we were, 3 weeks ago or whatever.
And not just Canadian, but also American advisors.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
It's a large, we have a large RIA in the U.S. as well, so it's going to be great for listeners too, that we can now, find great people in the U.S. to help. Some of them might want some help.
Yeah.
And also to that end, I mean, yeah, go ahead, Ben.
I just want to say, because I know there are clients that listen to this podcast, there are people who may consider reaching out to us as a client, that this deal with OneDigital, this partnership with OneDigital, it will not affect our investment philosophy. That is one of the things that they were attracted to. It's not something that they're going to change. They're not going to jam, high fee products and say you have to start selling these. It's the opposite. Our service offering won't change, and again, it will likely only get better. One of the things that we've talked about with OneDigital is adding complementary services to increase what we're able to do for clients in-house. So things like insurance, potentially tax. We've looked at different options there, which I think would be incredible. We talked about that with Mike as just some dreaming, as we called it. So if anything, I think what we've done here strengthens our conviction, because a firm as large as OneDigital, as prominent as OneDigital in the spaces that they operate in, has come and said, we want more of what you guys do at our firm. And that's why we've done this. So, and it also gives us more resources to execute on our vision and on what we've already been doing. And I do also want to mention that Cameron's not going to be coming back in the podcast as a full-time co-host like he was back in the day.
You guys are so good. I feel so good about that.
Well, people miss you too.
I get that. There's some nostalgia, and I loved every minute of it. You have to acknowledge that the three of you guys are really good.
Doing this podcast with you for however long we did it, 6 years, I guess, 7 years. I don't know how long it was.
7 years in March. Oh no, 7 years in August.
Yeah, total blast. Bringing Mark in was awesome. But I agree with you that the dynamic with Mark, Dan, and I is very cool. Dan brings something else.
Yeah.
It's almost like he to an extent replaces your sort of wisdom and common sense and calm demeanor. It doesn't replace you, but it brings the similar kind of elements. Now, that being said, Cameron will be coming back in the podcast with a segment to talk about what he's working on, what he's learning in his role as PWL's CEO as we embark on this kind of next chapter for the firm.
Yeah, that'll be total blast. Guess it'll be at the back end, kind of in the after show or something, but that's all to be determined. But yeah,
we'll figure that out. But you'll be back.
I'll be back. I'm not going anywhere. Cool. Well, to help tell this story, we thought it'd be great to invite Mike Sullivan, who's the co-founder of OneDigital, who along with Adam Bruckman founded the firm almost 25 years ago. The first 10 or 11 years or so, they built out an employee benefits and insurance business. And then over the past 14 years, they've been growing through acquisition. And it's an amazing growth story. So we wanted Mike to join us to give their background and the reasons that they reached out to us and how this all came together. So Mike's responsible for the strategic growth initiatives, acquisitions, partnerships, and he focuses on expanding the business in all kinds of different lines of business. Mike joined us from his place in the DC suburbs of Virginia, where he lives with his wife, Patty. They have 3 kids.
All right. This is, like I said at the beginning, it's a different episode. We're always, I don't know, it's always funny to see the feedback we got on different types of episodes. We'll try a different format. We'll try a different type of guests, and sometimes we're surprised by the feedback. So I have no idea what people are going to think about this episode, but it is a rare instance to kind of look inside of an M&A transaction that has happened involving people that you as listeners know, being Cameron and I. So hopefully it's interesting. I mean, this is a podcast about financial decision making, which this was for us. Obviously, maybe not applicable to all the listeners, but either way, hopefully it's got some interesting nuggets for the listeners.
Love it. Great setup. Okay, good to go to our conversation with Mike Sullivan. Mike Sullivan, it's great to welcome you to the Rational Reminder podcast.
Thank you very much, Cam. It's a pleasure to be here.
Great to see you after all these months of conversation. So off the top, Mike, how would you describe OneDigital to our listeners?
So OneDigital is a US-based insurance, financial services, and human resource consulting firm that works with both individuals and families and employers all over the country, and now starting in Canada as well.
Yep. Love that. How big is OneDigital?
So OneDigital today is about 5,000 employees in the States, and very excited to say about a little over 100 employees now in Canada. So pretty good sized company, I think.
Yeah.
So Mike, you're a co-founder, founding it just under 25 years ago, but 14, 15 years ago, you started down the path of acquiring other companies. How many acquisitions have you done over the years?
So over that, I think ballpark about 15 years, we've done probably a little over 200 acquisitions. And they've kind of come in all shapes and sizes. But specifically when I was talking to you and Ben about this, it really comes down to we've done to date about 5 what we call platform level acquisitions, which are really sort of, we describe them as the core of a team that we're going to build a business around. So when we think about Canada, we think about PWL being the platform that we're going to build our entire operation around.
And how many have you done outside of the U.S.?
This is our first acquisition outside of the United States. So very excited to make that happen and make it happen with your team.
Amazing.
It's very cool.
It is very cool. You've done a lot of acquisitions, fewer on the platform side, but a lot of acquisitions overall. How do you decide whether a firm that you're considering acquiring is a good fit?
So, I would say that I've kind of described it in the past that we've kind of been on this road less traveled. And by that, I mean, for us, we tend to focus almost first, second, and third on the cultural fit of that organization. So we spend a lot of time around the country and now in Canada, meeting people, getting to understand if we fit each other from a people standpoint, and assuming we kind of see the world through a similar lens, have a similar client focus, whether it be at the individual and family or at the employer level. And what we have found is that if you get the cultural fit right, there's very little that you won't figure out together. If you don't get that right, there's almost nothing that you'll figure out together. So we focus on culture and then let the math of an opportunity present itself post that. It's a little bit different, I think, than most organizations out there, but it's served us really well in terms of identifying teams that fit us and where we think will be a great partner.
So your roots are in the insurance, employee benefits. How did you now end up deciding to get into wealth management?
So, it's interesting. Had you told me 5 years ago, would we be building the way we're building today in financial planning and wealth management? I'm not sure I would have gotten to this sort of intersection. But really what we found was we spent 20 years as an employee benefit advisor, and our first big rotation was into the retirement space. And in the retirement space in the US, it's all about serving the plan participant. And what we found was whether it be at the C-suite level or throughout an entire organization, people were in desperate need of financial planning. So we began to build that way. And then the other interesting thing is in our core employee benefits business, all of our survey work was coming back basically saying financial stress is the number one stressor of all employees in all different segments of our US economy. And I think we're going to find it sort of across the world. So we basically said, if we're going to serve people the right way, and if we're going to do what we need to do for employers, we have to start thinking more broadly down to the individual and family level. And it began this journey of building a different kind of wealth management firm. And I'm really excited. It's the fastest growing part of our business. And it really led us to this opportunity to connect with you guys.
You mentioned building a different kind of wealth management firm. Can you talk about your vision for wealth management?
Yeah, I mean, the beauty of starting this process more recently versus, I think, decades of maybe legacy ways of thinking about markets and structures and that kind of thing. We're basically like, if we could take a client-centric approach to financial planning and wealth management, do it as a fiduciary, and take a much more systematic investment approach to model portfolios and driving low cost investment options more broadly into the marketplace. We think that's the pathway many firms are looking at now. But the interesting thing is that the more I started to talk with you folks and the more we started to understand the Canadian market, it really presented itself as an even more opportunistic situation in Canada because of the way the Canadian market is built.
Let's double down on that. Can you talk about the opportunity you see for all of us in wealth management in Canada?
So look, a lot of this I've learned from you and Ben, and I've learned from a lot of diligence that we've just gone through, taking this big step to move outside the US. But when you take a step back and you look at what the data says, the data will tell you that the Canadian market is the most expensive market in the world for consumers to get advice, and probably you could argue the least efficient way in which it happens today. So when you're presented in a discussion like we've been having over the past 15 to 18 months, getting to know each other, and you basically say, could we start with the right team doing business the right way, presenting a totally different value proposition in the marketplace? When a market is built the way the Canadian market is, as I described, it just to us sounded like a great business opportunity to be a partner with someone and build together.
What about PWL specifically made you want us to be part of OneDigital?
I still kind of think about from the early conversations on Zoom with Cam, better understanding what PWL is all about, to meeting you, Ben, and Brenda, and Tessa, and really throughout the entire organization. We're almost mirrors of each other from a cultural standpoint. What's important to us is important to you. The way we want to build and create opportunity for our own employees, the way we want to take care of clients, all of that is, and I think you'd agree, it's almost remarkably similar in terms of how we're building and how we think about nurturing a great culture. So when we felt so strongly aligned with your team as people, And then we started applying sort of our philosophies on planning and investment and being a fiduciary. It simply, to us, felt like a match made in heaven. So really, really excited about that. But it was kind of who you are as people really fit us as people as well. And that's a great place to start.
Do you remember, Mike, when you realized that this was going to be a good fit?
I think, you and I kid, Cam, that you and I probably have spent 50 hours in conversation about, does this make sense? We love finding firms that don't need us to be successful, right? The question is, could we play the second half of the ball game together in a way that creates something special in Canada? And I think when I went from spending a lot of time talking to you, then began to talk to Ben, can't tell you the number of podcasts I watched. You get a feel for an organization, and then all of a sudden something clicks, and you're basically saying, it's a humbling thing to be able to align with an organization like yours. And when you realize that, and you kind of let that wash over you, you fundamentally understand that you're going to help make us a better company. And I'm not exactly sure when that clicked, but it was pretty early in our conversations where I knew it would be a pretty humbling thing and a pretty cool thing for us to be able to pull this together as partners.
You mentioned it, but I've got to ask, since we're here on this podcast, what role, if any, did this podcast play in your interest in PWL?
Well, I'd say it this way, Ben. It was an intriguing piece of the puzzle, right? We meet all kinds of talented folks that know how to be good planners, but to find a team that has been able to amplify your voice in the marketplace the way you have, through the podcast, through the YouTube channel, we all of a sudden basically said, not only is this an opportunity to align with an incredibly talented team that fits us culturally, but we can really learn from you about how to build this kind of presence more broadly in the US and really approach it as an investor in how might we continue to amplify your and other voices across the country. So I think we would have been very fortunate to align with their team, whether it was there or not, but it's a really interesting way in which I think we're going to continue to grow and amplify what it is we believe in so fundamentally. So it's a really cool piece of the puzzle.
Our first call, Mike, was June of 2023, over 18 months ago. What initially caused you to reach out?
So I had spent a fair amount of time getting to know the folks at Dimensional. And I can't even remember exactly, but somehow Canada came up when I was in a discussion with folks at Dimensional, and it led to me meeting Brad in Canada. And then when I said, if we're seriously thinking about this first expansion, and it was all tied to, if we're going to move outside the US, the most logical thing when you're in our shoes is make it close to home, make it, easier than it might be looking to go farther around the globe. Brad said, well, look, if you want to start at the top of the talent pool, you should go have a conversation with Cam at PWL and really understand what their view is of the world. And so it led to me calling you and us becoming BFFs.
I feel like, Cameron, you got to tell your story about that first call with Mike.
Yeah, sure. It's interesting because listeners know that I love talking shop with people, and I'll talk to pretty much anybody. And I talk to multiple people every week from all over the world about the business, either joining the business or other opportunities that are out there. So I gladly took the call with you, Mike, and I never heard of OneDigital, as I suspect most listeners have not heard of OneDigital. But if I think back to that call, I mean, first of all, we got along. It was clearly about people coming together to create something special that doesn't exist. And I know it sounds like perhaps a cliche line, but it is true. It wasn't a business deal. Like, I've had numerous other firms reach out to make an offer and insinuate that because we're not interested, we're crazy to not take this offer because it's about lining our bank accounts. And our conversation was not that. It's like, who are we and who are you and what are we all trying to accomplish, and can we do things better together? And this is something, Ben, you and I have talked about this a lot, right? Because we're on to something in terms of the belief system, the type of people we attract, the service we're delivering, the messaging is getting out there and it's working. And like you said at the top, Mike, we're over 100 people. So we are a successful, small, large firm. And we're doing great. And you're right, we do not need you. You do not need us to be successful. But you start to look around and say, well, what could we become? I mean, our team is incredibly talented, on average, incredibly young. The average advisor in our team is more than 20 years younger than I am. And our average client is quite young also. So we're in a rather unique situation. So you look at that and say, what could we become? Long before you and I spoke, Mike, Ben and I have talked about this, and others in the firm have riffed on this, is what is possible. Then you start to say, well, how do you do this? And we didn't have the expertise of how to scale this without losing that client touch, without losing that closeness, that intimacy with clients, which we will not lose going through this. This is about amplifying what we all believe in. It's about magnifying our messages. It's about helping people, for example, on the other side of the border that happen to listen to either the podcast or Ben's YouTube channel, et cetera. So it just seemed like a possibility that would just be worthwhile continuing discussions. But, I mean, we talked back and forth and said, well, we're fine without you. We just kind of carried on, and then we reconnected. So it was a really slow, methodical, thoughtful, skeptical. We've forced skepticism into our thinking process around this. So we think we've done a pretty good job around this. But that's my recollection. Ben, like you and I talked a lot through that. What do you think about all this at that time?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned our skepticism, and we were, no offense, Mike, super skeptical of all those conversations that we had as people started reaching out to us. But every time we talked to you, Mike, and to other people on the OneDigital team, that skepticism decreased and decreased until we got to a point where it was like this is really what they say it is, and this fit really is as good as it seems. But yeah, I mean, like you said, Cameron, we started out saying it's kind of cool that we can have these conversations with firms like OneDigital and others that had reached out to us, but we're kind of fine on our own. And while that was true, and I think you say, Mike, that you guys like to acquire firms that don't need to be acquired or don't want to sell. So that is true. We would have been fine, but it became increasingly obvious that going down this path would make us better than we could be on our own.
Yeah, look, I talk all the time, Cam, about the fact that Adam and I started the company 25 years ago. We've been at this for a quarter century. And at some point when you're a private equity backed firm, you go from the concept of like, look, we want to grow organically, we want to grow acquisitively, but you feel like acquisitions are part of what is required when you're PE backed. And again, after literally decades of doing this, all of a sudden you're sort of like, if an opportunity doesn't make us better, it's not about getting bigger. So much of what goes on in the marketplace, people talk about size and somehow equate size to sort of how effective that firm is. And there's an implied correlation between the two. I'd argue the vast majority of PE firms are actually less capable once hundreds of acquisitions are done. So, I never forget the day, I think, Cam, you and I have been talking for probably 8-10 months, and you basically said, we can't do this. I just can't get there intellectually, emotionally. It's just not the right time. And I was so bummed. And I remember, I think it was probably a month later, I texted you and said, I'm not going away. And you just kind of sent back a smiley face, and we started talking again. And I think we just finally came to the realization that, one, we can do something really cool together. Two, I think we bring interesting capabilities and talents and experiences to the table. And I think we just came to the realization we can be better together and serve more clients more effectively together. And that's when you find that, you just figure it out.
Yeah, and acquisition sounds so kind of business school MBA kind of speak. And it's more about bringing people that are aligned together to create something great that I would argue Canada desperately can benefit from. There's so much demand for what we represent and who we, and I say we is the planning community in Canada, not just the people here. And there's an obvious opportunity to bring people like all of us in this community together in one super structure to be better at what we all do and to help more people. To help more people, it requires a certain amount of platform and scale and abilities and expertise and balance sheet. That's the reality, right?
Yeah.
And this is a model that we've witnessed from here in Canada, in the US, where you get these scaled, amazing advice, client-centric firms that have built and scaled and deliver incredible services. That's what we want to do.
Yeah.
Yep. I remember that text, Mike, when you told Cameron that you weren't going to go away. And we started talking to you again. And we at that time, we had made up our minds that we were going to keep going on our own. But then when those conversations started up again, it just became increasingly obvious how you guys were thinking about how we fit into what you want to build and how you can augment what we're doing. And so then we were like, okay, let's take this seriously and look at it. And then as we spent more time with the people, that cultural fit that you talked about earlier, it just became so obvious. Every conversation, every interaction that we had, we came away from it being like, yep, that was another great person. And
Yeah.
And there was never go ahead.
But I'll tell you, the other thing is really cool, and there's attributes that you look for when you're talking to teams on the other side. And I remember I'd been oriented towards Cam. I met Cam first. Cam was the largest shareholder inside PWL, and we got to a point where it's like we really need to dig in and think more about this strategically. And I'll never forget the Cam said, like, okay, I'm ready to sort of re-engage. You got to talk to Ben because Ben's not there. So now spend time with Ben. And the level of respect that was shown and the level of, like, if it doesn't work for Ben, it's not going to work for me. And if it doesn't work for Ben, Ben's a proxy for a whole host of other people inside the firm. So pivot over there and spend time with Ben. And you and I started going through this conversation. So it's the right way to figure out whether or not you're meant to come together. And it's all about strategy and common vision and building for the long term. There's nothing synthetic about this. It's all about build for the long term.
And as you often say, not leading with a spreadsheet, which I can tell you from other conversations over the years, they're often spreadsheet driven.
Look, we were at a conference recently where it was, the exact quote was, put culture at the bottom of your list and then get around to that at the end. And yet most advisors, I think, would suggest it's the number one issue they're trying to understand. The problem is culture doesn't fit into a spreadsheet. Long-term equity growth doesn't really fit into a spreadsheet the right way. There's a lot of other things that allow you to line up the math that kind of becomes the litmus of where people kind of position entities like ours. I don't think anytime I think you lead with that, I don't think you end up building great companies. I think you end up building bigger companies, but I don't think you build a great company that way. I think we're going to build a great company together.
So now that you're here in Canada, how do you think about applying what's worked to date in the Canadian marketplace?
So, I think I've kidded with you that, like, over the past 25 years, we probably made every mistake we could make. So we're going to come to Canada and say, let's not make those same mistakes in doing certain things. So it took us time to realize that culture is the number one, number two, and number three thing. And so, you guys, you're basically a proxy for OneDigital in the marketplace, and you're going to lead in terms of where we go have additional conversations. But I do believe that this, some of the core strengths of OneDigital, we have a deep understanding of scaling businesses and building operational prowess, or building operational processes for scaling. I think we're going to lead from a technology development and AI standpoint. I think we've spent a huge amount of time and have a significant group of people in what we call people and culture that fits so well with Tessa and your organization in terms of how we think about aligning with the people that take care of our clients every single day. So there are decades of learning on how you go from. So think about if we're going to go from 100 team members in Canada to 1,000 team members in Canada, what does that look like? And how do you do that so that everybody loves walking in the side door every day and clients feel that passion? There's a nuance and a finesse to how to do that in an effective way. And I think we can really bring a lot of learnings over the past couple decades on how to do that the right way. So I think it's a lot. There are qualitative aspects to it, quantitative aspects to it, but it's a lot of learnings that we've sort of experienced that we're going to bring to Canada. And then I think you guys will help us modify whatever needs to be modified for the Canadian market.
That makes a lot of sense. You kind of touched on this in answering Cameron's question, but how would you describe, based on your experience with other acquisitions and what you see in PWL, how would you describe how being part of OneDigital is going to make PWL better?
Well, I think that if you think about it from sort of an internal, how do you continue to create opportunities for your teams? I think when you think about going from 100 people to 1,000 people in the marketplace, it creates amazing career path opportunities for folks that are inside PWL today, for teams that are going to join PWL in the future. I think for the first time, Ben, and you and I have talked a little bit about this. I think like I've gone through that phase where AI now and what AI is going to do at our business I've had that mind blowing experience where I'm like, it is going to change the advice giving business. It is going to change how work gets done inside your four walls and our four walls. So I think we're going to lead in that regard, and it should significantly help on the growth trajectory in Canada. Look, we're going to be a capital partner. We want like-minded teams in Canada to understand we are open for business. We are going to build something significant in the marketplace together that we don't think exists in Canada today. So done the right way, we create a gravitational pull of teams and talent to your organization. And when we get that right, it's going to create a gravitational pull of clients to the same thing, because I think we're both 100% in agreement that the solution that's needed at scale in Canada today doesn't exist. And that's the flag we want to put in the ground and basically say, let's become that company. So it's a lot of, I think, this operational technology and scaling acumen coupled with capital that's going to, I think, supercharge this build. And it's something I don't think either of us could have done on.
Something I find really interesting is the fact that you and your partner, co-founder, Adam Bruckman, are still very, very active in the business and love it, clearly. How would you and Adam articulate the objectives you have for OneDigital Canada?
Well, I think what Adam and I kind of talk about, and the interesting thing is like, we talk about this with our investors as well, which you and I have kind of, just one of those serendipitous things where our lead PE firm is Onyx out of Toronto. So we have Canadian investors that are now watching us make the move to build in Canada. But I think you present a unique opportunity for us. And that is apply all our learnings, start with an amazingly talented team. But how do we look at what has evolved over the past 10 to 15 years in the US market and apply? We think we're on the early side of an evolution in the Canadian marketplace that is going to similarly play out than what we've seen play out in the States. And so Adam and I are like, it's almost like being able to go back in time and say, what decisions would we have made differently? And let's go make those decisions now in Canada, because the market is just structurally almost the way we were in the States 10, 15 years ago. So, and I don't mean that in a pejorative way. I just mean it is in an interestingly evolutionary way in terms of the role banks play today and how significant they are. So it's a little bit different. So Adam and I talk about we can incubate something special and do it with this amazing team. But I think we're gonna make really good decisions and head down a path. And you and I have talked about, like, I don't know exactly what it's going to look like, but I think we're going to end up with amazingly talented people that take care of clients the right way, and we're going to scale it differently than what we've seen in the States. It's like, take what it took us 20 years to build here and go do it in 5 years in Canada, because we can apply the lessons learned.
Yeah, that's really exciting. Cameron, I'd like you to comment, and Mike, maybe you can share some thoughts too once Cameron shares his, just as the investor in PWL. But Cameron, can you talk about how this affects stuff like our service offering, how it's going to affect our clients, how it's going to affect our team?
So we're a purpose-built firm. We're built to deliver advice. That's our one job, right? Everything we do is revolved around the client relationship. And this whole coming together is about improving that, building a better platform to be able to help more people. But our advice teams are absolutely vital as part of what we do. They are effectively our product. Our service is our product. And, we've long dreamed about helping, as we said earlier, many, many, many more people, because we think it's desperately needed. As you said off the top, Mike, Canada's got some of the highest fees in the world and some of the lowest levels of embracing of systematic or index type portfolios. You combine that with great advice, we think those are great tailwinds around which to build. We've long felt that. Ben and I have talked about that for years. The opportunities is pretty obvious in Canada, and there is no scaled platform like that in Canada. There's some great advisors doing great work, as were we, but we're all kind of in our own pockets. But the dream of bringing more and more people together to amplify what we're already doing, I think is super appealing and have impact on this country. I think, and it's also going to be a whole lot of fun, right? But the team is very excited. We've had many meetings already, of course, and growth is good. Growth is good for clients. Growth is good for the team. Growth is good for careers. This is all a good news story.
Any thoughts, Mike?
Look, I again, it's like, we are humbled by the opportunity. We think it's a unique opportunity in our life cycle, just because of, we've talked before about kind of where and how Dimensional fits, where we've built Dimensional, like we're kind of building it into the DNA of what we're building as a company. So there's something interestingly symmetrical in terms of how we're thinking about that, like you are. I just come back to, it's up to us to get this right and align with the right folks for the right reasons at the right time. But you guys have already teed up a bunch of discussions, and you have so much. This really is a first for us, where we have aligned with a team that has so much visibility and so much credibility in the marketplace that we really are shoulder to shoulder as partners, saying, we think we're at the starting line of something really special. Have a conversation with us and understand more about this, because it's pretty cool and it's pretty unique.
Yep. I've been involved in some conversations with clients that we've reached out to, and some of them have been worried about stuff like that, which is why I asked about it. But our service is not changing. If anything, it's going to get better. Yep. Stuff like our fees are not changing. Our employees, like we're not, people worry about in an acquisition, you're going to lose a bunch of your good people. Not happening. We're keeping everybody. Clients are going to maintain the same relationships with the same advisors. So all that stuff is staying the same. And the way that I really look at this is that, as much as it is true that OneDigital has bought PWL or invested in PWL, you guys are really building around what we have now. So it's not a matter of like buying what we had and stripping it of certain things and using certain things. It's like you're taking this thing that you think is pretty cool, and you want to make it better, and you want to grow it in Canada. But on day one and day two and year 5 or whatever, stuff's not going to change. That's not why you bought us.
Yeah, you're not going away, Ben. I'm not going away.
Correct.
In fact, I'm as energized as I've ever been about what we can create together.
Yeah, I think people get nervous about change, but from the perspective of our clients, I don't think anything's really immediately changing, and any changes in the future will be for the better.
Yeah, I'm thinking, Cam, you and I, you and I exchanged texts, I think, a couple days ago, and it's like so rewarding when you sit in like my seat and you get a text from someone going, "I can't believe how much fun this is. It's opened this whole new door to the possibilities of what might be," and it's just a different, I always use this sort of sports analogy that it's like we don't want to talk to people necessarily when it's late fourth quarter and they're trying to figure out what to do. We want to meet a bunch of people at halftime and say, can we play the second half together in a way that is much more compelling for the teams that we align with and for clients? That kind of feels like what we're talking about here.
One of the things that Cameron and I have talked about a lot over the years is how we could become like the mothership for this type of thinking, the planning first approach, the fiduciary advice, the index/systematic type of investing, the markets work investing, whatever you want to call it. How can we become the place where all of those advisors want to be? Can you talk, Mike, about how being part of OneDigital affects our ability to become that mothership for like-minded advisors?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that, you've outlined it, right? It's like a client-centric, low-cost, systematic investing. It's planning first and being a fiduciary. It's just one of those things, Ben, where it never ceases to amaze me how noise in the marketplace can create short-term thinking and people chasing shiny objects when all the math will tell you there's a better way to do this for the long term. And so we're very much of the mindset that we have found the team that we can build around in Canada. But the other aspect of this is like, you guys have such a presence and visibility in the States and globally that we view this as it is a catalyst. It's like a watershed event for us where we're helping people understand this is the path we are going on. But so it's almost like we are taking a pretty large, $1.5 billion firm, top line revenue, that is approaching a bunch of startup businesses like an investor saying, let's take all these lessons, let's apply them to these new verticals. Let's understand it's all about aligning with the right teams at the right time to then grow and be a catalyst for other folks that are looking for the same thing. It's a unique opportunity, but I think you guys have influence across the entire globe, and we want people to understand we think very similar to the way PWL thinks, and it's still early in the game for us. It's going to impact our DNA.
I'd love to hear from both of you guys on the profile of advisor that we would like to attract to PWL/OneDigital Canada.
You want to go, Mike?
Please jump in.
Pretty simple. I mean, it's people that will make us better. There's a lot of great advisors out there that I think are in firms that they might not necessarily be aligned or shoulder to shoulder with an agreement with all their colleagues. And there is an amazing energy that happens when you bring great people together. We see it here, Ben, every day, right? When you've got this unbelievable, right across the entire firm, all 100 people, whether it's marketing, finance, we're all in total alignment about what we want to do. I would even make a spotlight on the advisory group. When you get advisors that really agree with how we invest, how we do planning, how we can use tools to do better financial planning, how we can improve how we communicate with people, how we can use tools that, for example, Braden's been creating, like the CPP tool and other tools he's built. Like this whole thinking, all the thinking that's come out of the podcast, all the research that you have done, this all trickles through how we communicate, how we think, how we work with clients. It's an unbelievable energy that happens. And advisors know if they embrace that. The advisors out there know if they believe in that. And I think there's an incredible opportunity to bring people that might want to be part of something bigger together in this environment. Now we have, the experience, the energy, and the culture to be able to amplify what we've been doing and what we dreamed. You and I have dreamed about this, Ben, for years of being able to bring people, because it's not in the marketplace today. It isn't.
Yep.
You know, in the marketplace today, like we are roughly something like $3-4 billion of clients' money that we help manage. That's a lot of money, but in the marketplace, that's not. Like there's firms in Canada that have many, many, many multiples more than that. So from a big picture standpoint, we have a great opportunity to, you know, make a difference for a lot of Canadians and make a difference for a lot of, you know, financial planners in this country and create something pretty cool. Let alone the like I said earlier, the crossover effect into the U.S. marketplace. We have a lot of listeners in the U.S. There's a lot of advisors that listen in the U.S. Like, I think we're all creating something equally special on that side as well. So what would you add to that, Ben? You know a lot of advisors.
Yeah, I mean, I think the one of the incredible things about PWL for advisors is the fact that they're on a team of incredible advisors. I mean, the stuff that comes out of our advice team is just crazy, and the volume of cases that we see, complex cases, and the learning that happens within that advice team is just mind blowing. We've had advisors join with years of experience doing fairly advanced financial planning tell us they learn more in their first 6 months than the last 5 years of their career, just because of the volume and the expertise that we have on the team. So I think that is very exciting for someone that wants to be part of that, for someone that thinks about planning and is a real nerd and wants to do the best thing for the client. I think it's a very exciting thing for that type of person to be part of.
And they might want to focus on the craft of financial planning, working with clients, and not have to worry about employment contracts or payroll or lease improvements in their office space or whatever. That's great. I've done that for years, if that's what you want to do. But a lot of people don't want to do it. They want to master the craft of planning, which is a beautiful thing to be able to focus on.
That's the thing, is our advice team is focused on giving advice and serving clients, and we've got a lot of the other stuff figured out. I mean, PWL's got a pretty robust infrastructure at all levels, and so advisors focus on advice, and they're fully supported. And we have lots of new clients that are interested in working with us coming in all the time. And so it's for an advisor that wants to be a great advisor, focus on advice, focus on being a bit of a planning geek, and do the right thing for clients. I think it's a pretty exciting place to be. But
you mentioned that growth, Ben. The reality is, and Mike, you know this better than us probably, the growth in the industry is very, very low when you take out market growth. Most advisory firms are not growing, and most of the growth is going to the largest, I think, few dozen firms, I think is what the data shows. So growth is hard. So we have started to figure out that nut of getting regular people to reach out for some service. And that is another opportunity that I think we can do together, is to amplify that and accelerate that kind of growth and get more of our social media exposure going out there. Mike?
Look, I think what they said. Look, I keep coming back to we are very culturally aligned. We are approaching this with a healthy dose of respectfully guide us on how you think this build should go. And let's learn from each other in terms of what our experiences have been to date. But I think we're going to find a lot of philosophically aligned folks that want to get to a more efficient, less conflicted environment. And I think there's the most interesting thing to me is there are an ocean of advisors out there that are trying to understand what comes next. And it is, I have a huge amount of empathy for folks trying to figure out how is OneDigital and PWL different than, and then you fill in the blank, right? How are they different than these 5 or 10 or 15 other players, many of whom have been in the financial planning wealth management space a lot longer than we have. And I think that to do that the right way, you really need to spend time. You need to get to know people. You need to, I think, spend less time in the spreadsheet and more time in the conversation and dinners and lunches to understand, do you see the world through a similar lens? And like I said, when you get that right, the music just sings. And when you get it wrong, it's a real problem from the very beginning. So we're going to spend time getting to know people. And I think we're going to find that a lot of people are going to find what it is we're building very cool.
I have one question for Cameron before we go to the last question for Mike. We've been going through this process for, I mean, you mentioned that you first talked to Mike about 18 months ago. We started getting more serious about it more recently, and then we've been through a serious due diligence process much more recently over the last few months. And it's been, I mean, an incredible learning process going through that and assessing our different options. I mean, it was kind of like getting a practical MBA as opposed to an academic one. You're kind of seeing how stuff really happens.
Well put.
Which was amazing. But I'd be curious, Cameron, now that we've kind of come out the other side of that, what are you most excited about looking forward?
I would frame it as, what do I dream about? This is something Mike has said often to both of us, Ben. It's like, what do you dream about? Like, what could we possibly do when you think about that? Like, you dream about having, a firm that's much larger, that has many more services offered, that is attracting, new graduates that want to join the profession of financial planning, that you figured out how to build a training program where you're able to onboard. We read statistics like the number of people at Vanguard or other large firms in the U.S. are hiring these great planners out of the different universities in the U.S. I dream about that being a great place for people to want to come, either as recent grads or have their teams join. We know incredible professionals, Ben, that would have major impact on how we do what we do and be able to do it better. But to become this hub of excellence in financial planning, in investments, in communication, and helping people make better decisions, to what sort of services would we want to include? Now we have the ability, for expertise and balance sheet, to talk to all kinds of different kinds of service providers. What that might be, you can only imagine, right? Could be in the insurance field, could be in benefits, could be in property and casualty. I don't know. I'm just kind of just dreaming here. But these are the things that are now possible. But you take this core, which is client obsession, do the right thing, evidence-based, like anything is possible now. So it's been an amazing few months once you start to think that what you dream, and I know it kind of sounds hokey, but it's true. Like, when you dream of this stuff, now we can do it. And who knows who we're going to meet? Who knows who's going to reach out? There might be people out there, advisors out there, that have wanted to go down this path of converting their clientele to evidence-based or systematic investing, didn't know how to do it. Well, we could help that happen, right? We now have the mechanism to do that. It's well known. I mean, we have a lot of advisors that listen to this. It's well known that there's a succession problem coming, because the average advisor in North America is me and my age, like gender and age. That's the reality, right? And a lot of people don't have the succession part figured out. Well, we could help, be part of that if somebody wishes. So, I mean, I could riff on this all day long, but it's that's where my head goes.
Yep. Yeah, I think you said it, that becoming a hub of excellence for advice and financial planning and communication in Canada by attracting more of the best people. We already have some of the best planners. I tweeted last week that Melissa, one of our planners, got the second highest score on the CFP exam out of roughly 400 candidates. Like, I say that we have the best planners in the country, and it's not a joke. We really do. And attracting more people like that and becoming increasingly a hub of excellence, I think, is very exciting. And then, like you said, Cameron, the idea of being able to add other complementary businesses where we can really wrap around our arms around the client and be able to offer, hypothetically, obviously this is just dreaming, but that's what we're doing here. Being able to offer tax and legal and insurance all under one roof, all under one brand, all under one line of communication. That, to me, is extremely exciting for our advisors, but also for our clients.
And can continue to build out tools, like some of the tools that Braden's been building. The CPP calculator, I think, has probably become one of them, de facto sources of excellence in making that decision. 1,000 Canadians turn 65 every day, right?
Yeah.
And we've put it out there for the public to use, and it's had wild adoption. This is one example. It just helps make us better, make the country better, make advisors better.
Yeah, definitely.
Jump in, Mike. Anything to add to that?
No, look, I mean, I'm a pretty chatty fellow, but I can listen to you guys all day long. And you know what? I think you hit on something that I love, and that is like a big part of the way I'm wired, is like dreams, right? I'm 25 years in. I still dream about, the experiences that I want to have with my friends and family. And I dream about the company that I think we can build that is going to be truly amazing, right? The the bigger we have gotten, the bigger my dreams have gotten in terms of what we can become. And like, there's no end game yet. Um, and it's just it's a very interesting dynamic, and I get excited about listening to what gets you guys excited, because it changes the aperture of my dreams, and it's pretty cool.
Perfect segue, Mike, to the final question. How do you define success in your life?
So, um, I think I started down this path where it's like, when I think about just my life, my family, my friends, I'm an Irish Catholic boy from Buffalo. I'm the son of an iron worker. Started very modest in terms of um, what what shaped my view of what I could do and where I could go and how that would all come together. Feel truly blessed to have found a partner in the business 25 years ago, where we're like brothers, we're like best friends, and that group has just grown and grown and grown. So when I think about the two sides of the coin, sort of that picture of Janice looking forward, looking backwards. When it's about life, I get really excited about dreaming about creating experiences for my friends and families, for my friends and family. Um, and, position that you give back more than you take in this world, which I think we need a lot more of that. From a work standpoint, I dream about building a company of consequence that doesn't exist in the world today, that is desperately needed. Um, and I feel like this is an incremental step in that direction. Can we truly impact the lives of millions of people in the future with a solution that is the right solution at the right time in the marketplace, whether it's Canada or the States? So my dreams are getting bigger, and I love that part of it. And I get to dream with a growing list of people that are helping me reshape that almost every single day. So I feel really blessed in that regard. How about you guys?
Ben?
Are you turning the success question around on us, Mike?
Yes.
Oh my. We were asked this. We did the CFA Wealth Management Conference in Toronto, and we were interviewed about our experience with the podcast and how it's affected our business and stuff like that. And we were asked this question then. So I had never really thought about it until then, but I think my answer is still roughly the same, which is that someone who's successful in life is, it's kind of like a standard psychology definition. I don't know. You enjoy how you spend your time day to day, but you can also look back and be satisfied with your overall standing in life. Because you could enjoy your time day to day by sitting in a hot tub, but then you might look back in your life and be like, man, I haven't done anything. So I think it's finding that balance between enjoying how you spend your time day to day and minute to minute, but then also being able to look back and be like, yeah, I'm really happy with where I am.
Man, you guys have good answers.
Yeah.
I don't remember what I said there, but I think it was something along the lines of, I love getting up in the morning. I love it. I love getting up and being charged right out of the gate. Head to the
5
gym.
or 4
head to the gym, and I just love consuming ideas, and I love executing on ideas. I love, bouncing ideas off of Ben and the team here. Like, I'm dialed in, dialed up every single day, as Lisa can tell you. And I just feel lucky to have ended up in a career in an industry where you could do this and have this level of creativity that it's just so much fun every single day. Yeah, it's hard. Yeah, there's challenges. Yeah, we screw up along the way, but it's that desire to want to solve stuff. And we just have this unbelievable team that we've been able to come together with, that it's a total blast every single day. And I've seen this in the time spent with you, Mike, and the team, that it's the same
Yeah.
same thing, right? It's great people coming together to solve stuff. I've had people reach out to me already from all over the place inside OneDigital, just saying like, let's work on stuff. We don't have all the answers. Let's just figure it out together. I just love that. To me, that's success. Of course, great family and healthy kids and all that. All of us would say that, of course, because we're all family people. But that I just love. Like, I dread the day where I get up and I'm like, oh, I don't want to do this again. I've never felt that in all these years. And 34 years ago this month was when I started as an advisor. So it's been amazing.
Well, and look, for additional context, I get asked all the time. It's like, we're about to do our 5th private equity trade. I'm 62 years old. I've been chopping wood for a long time, right? But I love what I do, and I love experiencing things like this. And it almost becomes like a drug where you're like, what is this going to look like 3 years from now? What is it going to look like 5 years from now? And when you're focused on becoming better for your clients with people you actually enjoy going to have a beer or a glass of wine with after work or a cup of coffee, that it doesn't happen as often as it should, particularly when you're a firm that does acquisitions. Somehow by flipping that switch, this isn't supposed to happen the way it happens. This is normally the way people think when you make one hire at a time and you build a company one hire at a time. And what I think we're proving is you can actually do it via acquisition as well. You just have to approach it differently.
Well put.
Yep.
Great to have you on, Mike. Super fun.
Appreciate it, guys. I can check this off my bucket list now. I've been on a rational grind there.
We'll have to get you some swag.
All right, guys. Thanks a million, and thank you for your trust in making this happen.
All right.
Thanks, Mike.
See you guys.
See you.